Hi, it's Liz here. In this session, we will consider the educative mentoring approach and find out how we can learn to embody this approach in our work as mentors as we plan and review learning opportunities with our student teacher. The educative mentoring approach will help you to support your student teacher to learn from the analysis of their experience so that they not only learn that, but also learn how to. This approach contrasts to the traditional model of mentoring, where the mentor is the expert who must fill up the student teacher so that they can quickly undertake the processes of teaching by passing on what works here with transmission of an established body of knowledge and skills. Research has shown that mentors have a predominantly traditional and deficit view of teacher education, describing student teachers as incomplete or receivers of advice, and mentors as the finished article whose task was to act as a role model and assessor. As mentors, we can think of ourselves as teachers who have learned to teach, rather than teachers who learn from teaching. This can result in a judgmental rather than a developmental view of mentoring. Instead, the educative mentoring approach moves the focus from teaching performance to pupil learning, encouraging student teachers to learn and grow from analysis of their experiences, to be ambitious with their teaching, and to appreciate learning about their teaching. The student teacher is an active participant in the learning process, whilst the mentor purposefully and intentionally shapes learning opportunities in the mentee's intellectual zone of proximal development. The learning is situated in the actual doing of those tasks. The principles of educative mentoring are collaborative partnership between mentor and student teacher and critical friendship to support the development of the student teacher. I am sure we all agree that in order to promote growth, educators need to know their learners and what they bring to a situation, the subject matter that they are teaching, and the goals of learning. In the context of ITE, the student teacher is the learner that the educator or mentor must get to know. What student teachers bring to a situation, their beliefs, understandings, desires and needs will connect or interact with ideas, material and people to foster an experience that leads to growth. The subject matter is teaching. Yes, you are teaching. Not teaching them to teach, which implies that it's a fixed body of knowledge that you will be imparting to them and that they will be filled by the end of the year. The goal is helping the student teacher in learning teaching. Having developed knowledge of where your mentee is and where they might move next, in order to promote growth, mentors should engage their mentees in experiences designed to develop perspectives, beliefs and knowledge about teaching and learning. So, mentoring can be seen in this approach as situated inquiry. The educative mentoring approach sees the classroom as the site of inquiry where teachers learn in and from teaching. Different approaches to practice are trialled, and a problem of practice is the focus of the talk between the mentor and mentee. Questions are asked about practice and links are made with theory, reinforcing the connections between learn that and learn how to. Thinking aloud. This is when mentors share their ideas about issues and interpret what children say and do and make connections between different experiences. By thinking aloud, they help their mentee to understand how a teacher with a more sophisticated cognitive map of teaching and learning perceives an event in the classroom. The mentor will share thoughts, questions and wonderings whilst co-planning and they will make reflections on their own teaching visible. Mentors probe the thinking of their mentees and encourage them to articulate the rationale for their practice. Joint work. This is because mentees and mentors are collaborating on authentic teaching tasks, and they interrogate, explain and justify their practice during their joint work. They develop a more reciprocal and less hierarchical mentoring relationship, enabling them to learn from one another as co-learners. There's a focus on pupil learning. Lesson observations and debriefing are focused on pupil learning needs and goals. Pupil thinking and work is used as a source of knowledge about teaching and learning. Bifocal practice is how educative mentors attend to both the here and now and the direction that the mentee's learning is going. They have a bifocal vision of learning teaching. There are specific high leverage practices identified in order to help the mentee in learning that aspect of practice and leading them towards a better understanding of teaching and learning. The practices that educative mentors use include coaching, that's giving advice during the lesson, stepping in, that's demonstrating during a lesson, co-teaching, and demonstration teaching. Now we have heard about the educative mentoring approach, we will look together at how we can learn to embody this approach in our work as mentors as we plan and review learning opportunities with our student teachers. So we are looking at the mentoring skills we will be developing of lesson observation, giving feedback, target setting and student-teacher assessment through the educative mentoring lens. Firstly then, lesson planning. When co-planning, traditional mentors tend to show mentees their plans, describe activities and provide feedback on a plan that a mentee has subsequently developed, which informs the mentee of what to do when. However, to help the mentee to also understand why and how to plan, educative mentors co-plan collaboratively with their mentees, making their thoughts and decisions explicit and visible, and they focus on pupils' needs and learning goals. Here are some examples of the kind of language that you might be using. What do you notice about the language? It's more collaborative, using us and we. So we've made the lesson plan a focus here of inquiry into teaching practices to help us to deconstruct our practices so the mentee can examine and question them. Traditionally, whether we are wanting to look at strategies for dealing with behaviour, assessment or inclusion, mentors have tended to say, "Watch me," or "Watch this other teacher who does it well, and now you do it." But rather, in the educative mentoring approach, you might be using this kind of language. Mentors taking a more traditional, non-educative stance tend to give feedback by dispensing advice to a student teacher who unquestioningly receives it. In contrast, educative mentors encourage their mentees to contribute to professional conversations and reflect on their practice using questions to probe the mentee's understanding. When you come to formally assessing your student, again, the contrast is from a monologue where you are telling the student what you have decided to a place of dialogue. And you might be saying these sort of things so that the student is actively involved, sharing with you what evidence they think they have. Learning mentoring is not simply being trained to apply different activities. It is a process of developing practice based on a conceptual stance towards mentoring. We can learn about educative mentoring within our own contexts and through the process of mentoring itself. Really, it is about attending to the learning of our pupils, our mentees, and also ourselves. The tools of mentoring: observation, co-planning, co-teaching, joint inquiry, critical conversation, and reflection are also the tools of continuous improvement in teaching, so educative mentoring also offers possibilities for our own professional growth. It is challenging, changing from a more traditional conception of mentoring to an educative approach, and the challenges appear to be related to having to change our position in relationship to our mentee to become more equal as co-partners. And as mentors, we can find the change from a more traditional and hierarchical model to a collaborative model where our preconceived images of expert-novice interaction are challenged can be very difficult to embrace. We can also believe we are mentoring collaboratively whilst relapsing into more prescriptive and sometimes controlling mentoring conversations. It really isn't as easy as it sounds, and we need to be here to help each other with encouragement and challenge. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you would like to find out more about educative mentoring, there is an open access article in link. Thank you.